So let's continue our training alphabet with letter B. B this week is for body language. So body language is such a massive topic that we could have seminars about this, we could spend months talking about it, you could build whole degrees around just looking at body language. But it's such a cool concept to talk about, it's such a fascinating thing to explore. So today's video is not so much about understanding all the individual bits of body language, because we would be here forever, but more about encouraging you to appreciate what your dog is trying to tell you with different aspects of their body language, and encouraging you to seek out more information on the bits that might be relevant to you. So I've got quite a lot of little video clips demonstrating different bits that I'm talking about, but the first thing that we want to look at is how body language is a conversation, and people generally overlook the language part of body language when we're talking about it, when we're discussing it. So in general, when people think about their dog's body language, there's some really broad strokes concepts that people think of, things like, oh, a wagging tail means happy. My dog's wagging its tail is happy. And I do quite often then talk to clients who've maybe had a snap from their dog or an aggressive incident, and they've said, oh, he was wagging his tail, so I put my hand out to him and he just snapped. So that leads us to our first point today, which is that for all body language, you have to look at the whole context. You have to look at what the whole body's doing. So let's have a quick look at tail wagging. We all know, wagging tail can mean happy dog, but it can mean other things as well. So in this little clip here, Gimli wants to go outside, but it's raining outside. So his tail is wagging, but everything about him is telling me that he is not actually happy. His head's down, his ears are tucked, the tail is low and wagging slowly. So he's very much not happy right now, wagging that tail. In this next one, this is quite a happy tail wag, but it's also deep concentration from Gimli. He's hunting for mice in the long grass here, and he's really fixated on the task at hand. He's really concentrating hard. So although that tail wag is happy, if I was to disturb that, say by going over and trying to pat him, he wouldn't be aware of me approaching. He's so fixated on what he's doing that he's then likely to get upset and either get a fright and jump away, or redirect and snap at me. And he's not an aggressive dog at all, but if I disrupted him in the middle of doing this, it's not a happy come and play with me tail wag, it's a I'm happy doing my own thing tail wag. So we've got quite a lot of different body language going on in this clip. This happens in the middle of what we call Oliver's goblin hour, when he gets a little bit silly in the evenings and starts acting like an idiot. And Oliver wants to get up on the couch, but Gimli is sort of half guarding this bit of buffalo horn that's on the couch next to him. And the two of them are just sort of gently winding each other up a bit. So you can see there's a bit of barking going on from Oliver. There's a bit of sort of feinting. Am I going to grab the horn? Am I not? Am I going to grab the blankets instead? But you can see the body language overall is quite loose and wriggly. He's side on. He's not directly facing Gimli. He's turning his head away quite a lot. And that tail's going the whole time. And he used those little grabs at the blanket to test out where the line is. Where is Gimli actually going to react? He reacts when I touch this blanket, but not when I touch this blanket. So then a couple of minutes later, he's able to come up the side of the couch and into the spot that he wanted quite happily. So again, we saw a tail wag in that video, but it wasn't necessarily a I am a happy dog tail wag. So context is key. Context is everything. Next thing that you have to look at is how your own dog behaves. What is normal for your specific dog? So this video here, we have Bert interacting with Mason, who used to be in my group walks. And Bert thinks that this is a completely acceptable way to say hello and to invite Mason to play. And Mason's cool with that. Mason's like, yes, let's play, this is going to be great fun. But this posture that Bert has going is incredibly stiff and square. And that's partly just because of the shape he is. He's a bulldog, he's a very square-bodied, deep-chested dog. He is very blocky with his movements. And a lot of dogs really don't like that. Quite a few of my dogs, when they first meet Bert, are really uncomfortable with him because this body language to them is wrong. So if I owned a dog like Bert, I would need to be aware that how other dogs perceive his body language might change the interactions that they have with him. Not all dogs are going to look at him and see that he's friendly, because his body language actually looks a little confrontational because of the shape that he is. And you'll find that that is also true for dogs like collies or German shepherds that stare very intensely. You know, you'll have seen yourself, if you've got a dog like that, nothing can stare the way that a collie or a shepherd can, where they're very intensely watching you like this. And to strange dogs that are not familiar with them, that is incredibly confrontational. So dogs that are a little nervous of other dogs are going to freak out about that. And you can see some of that staring behaviour in this next clip, which is Scout playing with Toby. And I loved watching these two. I could have watched them all day, having so much fun together and interacting together. But quite a few times in this clip, you can see Toby the collie performing these intense staring behaviours. He freezes up, he moves very slowly in a stalking motion. And because Scout has invited him to play, that's not confrontational to Scout. But if it was a strange collie that he didn't know performing those behaviours, it would be very likely to upset him. It would be likely to freak him out. And so this is showing us that your dog's body language will be perceived differently by different dogs depending on whether or not they know one another. So this can be a problem if you've got a young dog who doesn't necessarily have great social skills yet. They might not understand that the dog that's approaching you in the street doesn't want this interaction and doesn't want this level of intensity. Most young dogs are going to go in paws first, straight into the older dog's face. It's what you often find is difficult if you're trying to introduce your puppy to other dogs on the lead, and that's something that we talk about in my classes. It's a very artificial way of introducing them where they have to approach one another head on, and young puppies are not good at monitoring it. So this brings us on to our next point, which is how dogs communicate with one another most effectively. And generally speaking, dogs communicate best if they are all off lead. That's not always appropriate. It's not always safe to have your dog off lead, especially if you've not worked on recall yet, or if you're in an area that isn't safe to be off lead. But what you can see in this next clip is that I've got one dog on a long lead and one off lead. And this is a great example of two young dogs playing and having a good time and having a bit of fun. But the reason I've included this one is that they also have a really nice conversation between the two of them, where they'll play for a few minutes, and then if one of them decides he's had enough, they'll separate really nicely. And they use something called displacement behaviours for this. So you see them wrestling, you see them having fun, and then every now and again, usually Cooper will break away and sniff something. And Barney immediately goes, "Oh, okay, we've stopped." And they'll trot along side by side, sniffing things for a minute, and then one of them will ask to play again, and they'll regroup and they'll play. And I was really pleased with this because these were two young dogs that don't always make the smartest decisions socially, but they're completely ignoring Gimli because Gimli is giving off no signs he wants to interact. They're playing with one another and they're playing really nicely. They are listening to each other, they are respecting one another's signals. So this was a beautiful example of two dogs playing really well together, and I loved it. The last thing I'm going to include, mostly so that this video doesn't end up being 20 minutes long, is a little aside about a specific behaviour that people see all the time but aren't necessarily aware of, and I talk about this one quite a lot, and it's the shake off. Generally speaking, if your dog shakes as if he's been wet, but he isn't wet, he does a great big shake off like Oliver is just doing there, that usually means that they've been carrying a lot of tension in their body and they're shaking off to release that tension before they get ready to move on and do the next thing. So in this clip, we've walked past the horse and Oliver found that quite intimidating. He didn't react, he didn't do anything silly, but after we got past the horse, he does the big shake off, going, oh, okay, that was scary, okay, we're done. And he's ready to move on and do the next thing. So be aware when you see the shake off. For one thing, it means that your dog has just released tension and is ready to move on to something else, and that's good. But it's also worth noting what made you tense in the first place. Why did you need to shake off? And how can we improve how you feel about that, or how can we manage it a bit better this time? So that's been a bit of a whistle-stop tour of body language. We've sort of delved into a couple of little snippets about it, but I hope it's been interesting for you. I hope it's been enough to spark a bit of curiosity about what your dog's body language actually means and how you approach interactions that you have with them. If you've got any questions about anything you've seen, or if you want to talk more about body language, drop me a message. It's something that I love talking about and I could just keep going all day. So it's a fun conversation to have. And if there's anything in your dog's body language that you don't understand and you want to explore in more detail, we can talk about that too.